This week on the GameCritics.com podcast, we're cleaning out the mailbag and breaking down Divinity 2 and Star Trek Online, boldly going straight into your hearts. The GameCritics.com podcast starts right now. Welcome, friends, to the 29th edition of the GameCritics.com podcast. I'm Tim Spaeth, back again in 2010. I will say, though, right up front, the year is not going well. And first of all, guys, were you like me? Did you think you'd get a lot more mileage out of Year We Make Contact jokes? I grossly underestimated the popularity of that movie. It was like a day and a half, and people were kicking me out for Roy Scheider references. So, very disappointed about that. And if you tuned in tonight for the latest Roy Scheider news, you will not find it here. You will find, however, three of the finest game critics our world has ever known. Say hello to Chi Kong Liu.
Hey, belated Happy New Year, everybody.
And Brad Gallaway.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And, of course, Mike Bracken.
Man, is it fucking good to be back.
Oh, I love it. That would be the first vulgarity of the new year.
That's what I was waiting for.
Oh, so good to be back with you guys. And a great show this week. We are opening up our leftover mail from 2009. A ton of listener questions. We're going to answer as many of them this week as we can. We also have a quick hit on Divinity 2. And I had a chance to spend some time in the Star Trek Online beta, a dream come true for any young man growing up in America. So we will get to all of that. Now, talking about Divinity 2, Mass Effect 2 hits on January 26th. It's the first real blockbuster release of 2010. Sure, we've had Bayonetta. We've had Darksiders, and along with those, flying way under the radar has been Divinity 2, Ego Draconis, or as I like to pronounce that, Ego Draconis, which of course is Latin for dragon waffles. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've been sitting...
Make that joke, man. You stole it from me. I'm kind of pissed about that.
Did? Really? Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
I had that joke ready, damn it.
I have been waiting to unleash that joke for about 3 weeks, so I'm...
Brad, man, you missed the obvious joke there. Lego my ego, man. What happened?
That would have been taking it too far. I didn't want to get cheesy with it. It was just like a quick name check.
Well, Brad, you're the one who's been playing a lot of Divinity 2. You've been tweeting about it for weeks now. Why don't you tell us about Divinity 2?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew basically nothing about Divinity 2 before jumping into it, and I'm kind of glad that I walked into it with a clean slate because my expectations were really wide open. And if anything, I was ready for it to kind of suck, but it's actually pretty epic in a lot of ways. For those people who don't know, Divinity 2, it's kind of an open world-ish third-person action RPG with the action and combat being in real time. And things start out like a pretty standard Western-style RPG. You make a character, you pick a class. You guys know how it goes. You start off the game being a dragon slayer, and you're on a mission to kill the last remaining dragon in this fantasy world. So you think you're up for like an epic battle, and you think you know how things are going to go. But as things go in games like this, there's a lot of twists and turns in the story, and eventually what happens is you yourself gain the ability to become a dragon. So that's really the game's big hook. It's like kind of like Western RPG plus flying dragon stuff. But before I get into the dragon bits, I do want to say that I was really, really, really impressed by what Divinity brought to the table. I know that there's been a demo out on 360, and a lot of people played the demo and walked away really unimpressed, and I can totally understand that. I mean, the game itself technically is not a jaw-dropper. I mean, you look at it and you're thinking, looks okay. Looks kind of like Fable, but maybe not as pretty. You notice little glitches here and there and stuff. It's not something to show off to your friends when they come over. But if you can get past the graphics and really get into the meat of what the game offers, it's great. And unfortunately, that's the other problem with the demo is it ends before you really get a chance to really understand what it is the game is driving at. So it's an okay. I mean, it's one of those situations where I kind of wish they didn't release the demo because I think a lot of people are going to miss out on some stuff that's really, really good because of poor initial impressions. But what this game does well is that it's a really hard, complex, intricate RPG. I mean, it's more complex than anything I've played in quite some time, and it may actually be the most complex. And what I mean by that is that the game's world is constructed in such a way that the player has to really play the detective more than anything else. You have to talk to a lot of people, you have to listen to what they say, you have to read books, and in this case, the books are not just there for flavor. A lot of these books that you find, in treasure chests and in houses, they actually have really important clues that you apply to a number of the quests. And speaking of the quests that they have are great. I mean, there's a ton of variety. The writing in the game is really darkly humorous. I mean, there's a lot of really funny things that pop up. Lots of cool references to other games. I mean, the writing is very smart. The voice acting is really done well. And if you are the kind of gamer that likes to get into an RPG and really play the role, I mean, if you really like to get your head inside the game and really think about things, Divinity 2 offers just an absurd amount of really, really, really quality content. I mean, it's a little ridiculous. Right now, I'm just about to go and fight the last boss, and I've spent about 32-ish hours or so, and that was me skipping a lot of stuff. That was me not, being as complete as I might generally be in a game of this sort. For gamers who really want to just, dig in, I mean, this game could easily be, maybe 60 hours, maybe even 100 hours if you crave that much. I mean, I in general don't, but it's there if you want it. So I was really impressed with everything the game did. I mean, the leveling system was really interesting. There's a mind-reading system that just opens up a lot of the interaction with townsfolk. I mean, rather than having a BioWare kind of dialogue tree, I mean, basically the conversations go only one way pretty much, regardless of what you say, but you alter them by mind-reading. So if you choose to use your mind-reading power, which all Dragon Slayers have, you forego the experience points that you would earn, and instead you learn what their innermost thoughts are. And sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes they're thinking about their grocery list. Sometimes they're thinking about somebody that they want to bang. But a lot of times you pick up on these clues. You think about, I'm not going to touch that one, Tim. They talk about I hit a key over in this place. I hope the guy doesn't look there. Or, oh, there's some gems over in this area. I got to go pick those up before my friend finds them, or something, that kind of stuff. So if you really want to delve into the game, there's a ton to get into, and I was just really impressed with how adult it all was. And I don't mean that in reference to my previous comment. I mean, you're kind of on your own. I mean, there's lots of places where you just have no hand holding you. There's nobody pointing the way, nobody telling you what to do. It's up to you to think, am I going to figure this out or am I not? And if you're not, then the game doesn't really stand in your way. But if you do, there's a lot of really quality loot and a lot of really cool story scenes to see that are there if you choose to find them. So from that aspect, amazing game. I've got nothing but positives to say about that.
Okay. Brad, you have just come off Demon's Souls and Dragon Age Origins. So you've had your fill of fantasy RPGs. Is Divinity really, really significantly different enough from those games that you were willing to devote another 20, 30 hours to another fantasy RPG?
Yeah, my question was along those lines in that exactly what's so unique about it, or what's more unique about it, compared to those games.
Right. I actually thought the same thing because when they showed up, I was like, oh my god. It was just like you said, I went through Demon's Souls twice. I went through Dragon Age, which is a massive undertaking in itself. I actually had put 40 hours into Final Fantasy 12 before this showed up, and I was like, oh my god, another RPG. Do I really want to do this to myself? Especially with Mass Effect 2 coming at the end of the month, which is my most anticipated game of this entire year, and yes, I do know it's January. I mean, I got into it thinking I would just kind of, whatever, half-ass it and see what it had to offer. But man, I got sucked in. I really did. I mean, it's hard to describe in just the limited time we have here on the podcast, but I will say that the complexity of the world, the amount of detail put into the world, and the kind of tasks that you do are so different and so incredibly sophisticated compared to what most RPGs do. I mean, it really is different. I mean, I would put this as more sophisticated than Dragon Age by a mile. And it's kind of on par with Demon Souls in terms of the level that you have to figure out yourself, because Demon Souls is absolutely not a hand-holding game, and I found that to be very true in Divinity 2 as well.
Can you give an example of the sophistication that you're talking about? Just one example, perhaps.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, you can go into like any dungeon and then clear out whoever's in there, but there's often, there's like hidden switches that if you just walk in this hallway, you're not going to find. But if you're taking the time to really look around, search your surroundings, you'll notice that one stone is maybe a little darker than the rest, and if that piques your interest, you can push it. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes like a whole other wing opens up, and you find all the stuff that you never would have found if you weren't taking the time to really immerse yourself in the environment. I mean, this and another aspect, I was trying to find a key to a locked door, and I just was going nuts because I couldn't find it. And then I just stopped and I said, well, if this was my dungeon, where would I put the key? And if it's not on me, then I would say, under the welcome mat or something, right? So I go back to the door and I look behind a box, like this one box that's next to the door, and bam, there's the key. It's like right behind the box. So, I mean, stuff like that is really, it doesn't take a lot, but like it goes the extra mile in a lot of ways that a lot of games don't. I mean, and another example is there's no shimmering halo around any items. So if you're not taking the time to like look inside jars or to search dead bodies and stuff, you're going to miss a lot. And it's not just items, but like clues, notes, stat ups. I mean, lots of different stuff. So if you really want to explore the environment in the truest sense of the word, there's like nearly endless stuff to see. So up until this point, I've said basically nothing but positives about Divinity, and the first 2/3 of the game are pretty mind-blowing if you can get past the graphics and such. But I do want to say, heads up to anybody, that when the game finally gets to its hook, being the dragon ability, it just completely just fucking crashes and burns, and it falls apart, and it just takes a crap all over itself, and it's really painful and embarrassing. So
can I jump in? I have one question. It's really simple.
Yeah.
Better
Absolutely.
or worse than Draconis on the PS2?
The game in total, or just the dragon section?
Well, both. Give me both, because I really like that game on the PS2. So I'm curious.
I'm really glad. I'm really glad you brought that up, because this game is Draconis taken to like the next level. If anybody out there besides us remembers Draconis and liked it, guaranteed you were going to fall in love with this game like hardcore, because this has everything that was good about Draconis, just more and better and deeper. So I can't believe that it's literally not the sequel to Draconis, honestly. But about the dragon thing, the thing that I really was disappointed about was when I read the instruction book for this game, it was interesting because the developer took time to write a note to everybody playing it and said, hey, this is a game we poured a lot of heart and soul into, which is very obvious. We loved it a lot. When we got to the dragon part, we had a lot of challenges, and we hope that you liked the game, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's interesting that they said that, because I think that they actually did not meet those challenges the way that they should. What happens is a lot of really, really fucking stupid stuff happens when you have the dragon. Like, all of a sudden, there's these, like, anti-dragon no-fly zones all over the place. A lot of the areas that you previously were able to access get covered in this quote-unquote poisonous smoke to prevent you from flying down too low. And a lot of like really weird stuff happens. Like when you're on the ground, there's enemies. You turn into a dragon, the enemies on the ground vanish and they're replaced by airborne enemies. When you turn back into a person, the airborne enemies vanish and the land-based enemies come back. I mean, to me, what this says is we had a good dragon idea and we couldn't get it to work with our super deep, really complex third-person RPG. So we just kind of bullshitted our way through it and cobbled it together, because that's really how it feels. It feels like they really, really dropped the ball. And for what is supposed to be like the main hook of the game. So I lost a lot of love for the game when it got to the dragon part, and I almost considered quitting it, honestly, because it got that bad. But I persevered, and I'm glad that I did, because it really does kind of pick up at the end. So if you are into like a third-person open-world RPG, this one has like really, really amazing stuff going on. You got to kind of grit your teeth to get through the dragon parts a little bit. But if you persevere, then it does get better. So if it wasn't for the dragon part, I would be saying that this is hands down going to make it on my top 10 of the year list, because I was so impressed with the first 2/3. But that last third, man, that was pretty painful. So I still would recommend it, though. It's got a lot of good stuff going for it.
I think the most obvious question for me is what the hell happened to Divinity 1? Where was that?
I did a little research. I don't know if anybody you guys played it. Did you guys play it?
It was a PC game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was PC only, and evidently it was pretty well received. I mean, from what I can tell,
very well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, not my bag, but I mean, maybe anybody in the listening audience has played it. But from what I can tell, it did really well, and it was positive. So.
And this is also available for the PC, PC and Xbox, right? Just those
360 and PC, nothing else.
Gotcha. Well, any other questions or thoughts on Divinity 2? Thank you so much, Brad, for
no problem. And I just want to jump in one more time because I really don't want to sell this game short. If anybody was put off by my bit about the dragon, it's totally okay to be put off by that, but don't miss out on everything else the game does right because it really is an amazing RPG.
And that's why we love you, Brad, because nobody else is talking about this game, and like I said, it is way under the radar, and people need something to do before Mass Effect 2 comes out. So. Well, I had a chance to spend some time in the open beta for Star Trek Online. Hold on, guys. Oh, it's exciting. This is an MMO. It's coming out February 2nd. This is a beta, so obviously everything I say here is subject to change, although, honestly, February 2nd isn't that far away, so it can't change that much. So that I know how nerdy I can get here, are any of you guys Star Trek fans at all?
The original show, I like. Fuck Picard, man. Jesus Christ.
Hey, I was going to say I'm a TNG guy, so fuck you.
Biggest wuss in the galaxy, Picard. It's all about Kirk.
Yeah, I'm a Shatner man myself. Brad, you were saying, I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, I love all of Star Trek. I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but I do, I watch it. I've seen most everything, and I enjoy it. I mean, I don't own any shirts with the little Starfleet logo on them or anything, and I don't wear the Spock ears, but, I like it. I'm a fan.
Do you know Scotty's portion of the Enterprise self-destruct sequence? Do you know his code?
That would be no.
It's 1A 2B. And that right there tells you how much of a Star Trek fan I am. I'm a big fan, and
quick thoughts on the J.J. Abrams movie.
Love the J.J. Abrams movie. Thought it was an astounding balance of fan service to all the old school fans, but you didn't have to know or understand or acknowledge that any of that was in there to really enjoy the new film.
It was like one of my favorite movies of the summer, actually. So.
Yeah, just an incredible balancing act and astoundingly entertaining, and really surprised me. And like I said, I'm a Shatner man, and
they needed Shatner in it though.
Yeah, I don't know. You have the continuity.
Not the shape he's in today. That would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, you'd have to digitally.
I'm saying that they got Nimoy to come back for it. Then they have to give fucking Shatner a cameo.
But he's in shape though. He looks okay. He's old, but you can still recognize him. I mean, Shatner's like
everybody knows who Shatner is. Still, we see him on the fucking Priceline commercials. He's the man.
You'd have to get rid of like 3 chins before we'd be able to like.
Spock Nimoy could still do Spock. Shatner can't do Kirk anymore.
But if they could de-age Patrick Stewart in the X-Men movies, they could de-age and like digitally compress William Shatner to play Kirk again. Anyway, we're digressing. We are not a Star Trek nerd show, although I am a Star Trek nerd. What you have to understand about us Star Trek fans, and the reason it makes so much sense to attach a Star Trek license to an MMO, is that we have all, and this is a little embarrassing to admit on a podcast, but we have all fantasized about living in the universe, wearing the uniform, commanding a starship, making love to beautiful alien women. So an MMO, a Star Trek MMO is very appealing to me if it gets the details right. And the failing of most Star Trek games, for the last 30 years of Star Trek games, is that they generally get the details wrong. They play fast and loose with the canon, and it breaks the illusion for us. So as for this game, I've only had a couple hours to put into it, enough to get through the tutorial and earn my own command. And I think in terms of the world building, they're on the right track. It really does look and feel and sound like Star Trek. As for the actual game, that's another story, and we will get there. The game begins with the creation of your character, What you need to know is that the developers here are Cryptic Studios. They made City of Heroes and more recently Champions Online. Those two games have the best character creation tools in the genre. They are second to none. And Star Trek is right up there. The tools are just as good. You can choose from 10 different alien races. You can create your own. You can pop different forehead appliances on your guy, give him antenna. You can adjust everything about your body. You can design your own Starfleet uniform.
You can invent an entire race.
You can invent an entire race. And apparently, if other people can then adopt your race, and if your race gets enough members, like if you could have an entire guild of just your race, then you might get a home world, and they might put missions on your world and people can go to visit it. At least that's all in the marketing materials. None of that is in the beta.
I can see that being horribly abused, though, don't you?
Oh, of course, because certainly you can abuse the character creation tools to create an alien race that looks like genitalia. Not that I tried it myself, but I saw this in the game, so I would imagine that will happen. And I don't know if Cryptic is going to police that or not. But what this all brought back to me was I thought back to my 12-year-old self sitting in class with a notebook paper, drawing my own starships and drawing my own Starfleet uniforms, and it really brought that sense of nostalgia back for me. And I think that part of the game they've really nailed. Once you create your character, the game itself, and like I said, I only played through the tutorial. It drops you in the middle of a Borg attack on your starship, the Borg being the cyborg people that fly around in the cubes. That was disappointing to me. The Borg are totally played out. But every Star Trek game, and I mean this quite literally, every Star Trek game for the last 10 years has used a Borg attack as its tutorial. So to see it again here was a bit disappointing. The game is 2 games in one. It's really 2 separate MMOs. There's a ground game where you run around with your person, and then there's a space game where you control your ship. The ground portion is really weak. It's really weak. It is essentially like every MMO that you talk to guys, you get quests, you turn the quest in. All the quests are variations on go shoot 8 Borg, go collect this, go free 4 hostages, and then come back and get your quest reward. There's no innovation here, and frankly, it's kind of a step back because, and I realize it's just a beta, but it's very sluggish, it's very choppy, the interface is cluttered, it's kind of ugly, and it could just be all the hours I've spent playing World of Warcraft, but I really miss that polish. I miss that Blizzard polish, and it's really needed here badly. The other problem, one more thing on the ground game, is that the bridge and actually all of the interiors are built like 4 times too big. So, for example, the turbolift doors are actually 3 stories high, and it looks just ridiculous. It's completely unimmersive, and like I said, it just feels very clunky and unfinished and rushed. The space game, on the other hand, is actually a lot more interesting. It plays like the old Starfleet Command PC games. I'm going to assume that none of you played those, but anybody listening who has. Honestly, looks like it was done by a completely different development team. Clearly, Cryptic spent much more time on it than they did the ground game. It's much smoother. There's much more to do. And I have to say that, the grand finale of the tutorial is you team up with 10 other ships and you take on a Borg cube, and it was exciting, and it looked and sounded like those events did in the television series and the films. They did a really nice job there. The problem is you spend much more time in the ground game than you do in space.
I got a couple questions for you,
yeah.
If you don't mind. I guess number one is, without knowing much about this particular game, is there going to be any of the iconic characters? Like, would you be able to bump into Captain Picard or Captain Kirk or something like that, or whatever, depending on any recognizable people from the show? And secondly, I guess I'm not clear. Are you going to be able to have your own ship? Does everybody who play the game effectively act as a Starfleet captain or whatever, or can you be Mr. Engine Room Schmo who just like a crafting or something like that? I mean, what is the roles like?
To answer your first question, the game takes place 40 years in the future, so most of those characters are dead or at least long retired. So the idea was to separate themselves from the continuity so that they would have the freedom to do whatever they want with the plot. So, for example...
Yeah, because the nerds will cry about canon anyway.
Right.
You joke about that, but that's a huge reason why so many Star Trek games fail. I mean, it really is. To answer your second question, yes, everyone becomes the captain of their starship, but of their own starship, and that's how the tutorial ends, is you become your own captain and you get to name your starship, and it's very moving and emotional. But the
you can name it anything you want.
Anything you want, and believe
there's going to be like some really awful ship names, like Sephiroth XXX,
yeah,
Clouds, Strife, Tifa. All in one ship.
Absolutely. My favorite starship name that I saw was the USS Riker's Beard, which I thought was very creative. But you can specialize in different things. So you could be like an engineering ship, you could be a science ship, or you could be like a warship. And so in those respects, you kind of have the divisions of duties. What it comes down to is it is falling back on the standard MMO trope of a tank, a healer, and DPS. And so there are defensive ships, there are support ships, and there are attack ships. And in that respect, it's a little disappointing that they didn't come up with a new mechanic underlying everything, but that's how they're handling it.
So is it going to be like Star Wars Galaxies to you then? It's not really taking advantage of the universe, the Star Trek universe to you?
It's too early to say. I think the problem with Star Wars Galaxies is that it didn't even try, whereas this game tries. I mean, you do see a lot of iconic Star Trek imagery. You do get to live out the fantasy of being a captain. Like I said, I haven't done anything as a captain yet, so I don't know what that's going to be like yet. But it's definitely a step above what they did with the Star Wars license in Galaxies.
Hey, Tim.
Yes, sir.
Are they going to have that 3D chess game that you always saw like on Next Generation? Is that like a little mini game you can do?
You can walk around your ship, and my understanding there is a recreation deck. So I'm hoping, if they're being faithful to the original series, that they will have the 3D chess, but that also they will have shirtless fencing, which, if you remember... in episode, well, yes, in that episode, what was that episode? The Naked Time, Sulu had shirtless fencing, but then in episode 9, Charlie X, Captain Kirk had shirtless wrestling. And as long as I can take my shirt off in the game, I think that will be immersive enough for me.
Well, speaking of that kind of stuff, what about the holodeck? I mean, that's like everybody's number one thing. We do all sorts of crazy stuff in the holodeck. I mean, is there a holodeck on your ship? Can you buy one? Can you upgrade one? And if so, is there like a little text parser saying, enter what you want to see? I mean, that to me would kind of get me to sign up.
That sounds great, and I will have to look into it. I certainly, because it's 40 years in the future, I would expect very advanced holodeck technology. Obviously I'm going to use it for lovemaking, but what?
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about here is porn, of course. I mean, yeah, that's the reason anybody wants the holodeck. So
of course, and as I've said many times, as soon as our civilization invents a holodeck, civilization ends right there. That's it. We're done. So. And certainly I'm not expecting any of you to try this game. I'm not, like I said, I'm not even sure I'm going to buy it right away. Maybe down the road if the price drops, But like I said, the potential is there. It did not turn me off entirely, as most Star Trek games do. So I give it points for that. So let's pause for station identification. When we return, we'll read your cards and letters. 2 and 2. Be right back at you. Time now for Reader Mail. Let's get right to it. We've been letting it build up for quite a while. Here is letter number 1. It comes from Shankster. Shankster writes, how do you feel about unfinished levels being completed after a game's release, then sold as DLC? Do you feel ripped off at paying extra for content that should have been included in the first place?
I am not a fan of this. I don't like downloadable content that I have to pay for unless it's something that comes along significantly after the game is done and I feel like I got my core $60 experience. The best example of this, I think, we talked about this before, Capcom's Resident Evil 5, where they added all these modes like a week after the game came out and you had to pay for them. That's bullshit. I don't want that. But like if you do an add-on like Fallout 3 or something where they've added more scenarios after the game has been out for a while, or they hold them for a couple months, and I feel like if I don't buy those, I still feel like I got a full experience out of Fallout 3 as it is. That's okay. It's really that fine line though. If when it feels like they're nickel and diming you to death and you paid $60 for a sort of finished game, it really pisses me off. But if I finish the main game and feel like this was worth the $60, I got the full experience, and then there's like bonus things I can do or not do if I choose down the line, then I'm okay with it.
I would go along with basically what you said. I mean, I hate to kind of just ditto you, but it is kind of a fine line, and I think a lot of it, to me anyway, has to do with exactly like you mentioned, like how soon it comes out afterwards. I mean, games that launch with DLC available are fucking bullshit to me. Yes. I mean. And it totally pisses me off because you automatically feel like you're missing out on something if you bought the game. And, I mean, it was kind of like Dragon Age. When Dragon Age launched, I mean, granted, everybody who bought the game new got one of the DLCs for free, which was fine. But there was another one that, was right alongside of it, and nowhere in the game do you have, like, an item box to store your stuff. So if you wanted an item box, you had to, like, buy this extra mission. And granted, it was a good mission. I mean, I'm not naysaying the mission itself, but just the concept that there is stuff ready on day one, to me, feels really dirty and cheap. And I don't like to feed into it, but at the same time, the obsessive compulsive side of me is like, oh my God, I'm not getting the full experience. I'm missing out on something, Right. I mean, if it's just like a couple like multiplayer maps or whatever, I can let those go. But if it's like anything story based or anything that, like God forbid a new character, like, oh my God, it kind of messes with my head a little bit. So I kind of resent it. But then again, it's like, like Mike said, if it's like a month or two after the game's been out or even longer, and people have, completely beat the game and been done with it, and then something new gives you a reason to get your disc back out. I mean, that's kind of cool. Like it makes you feel like you were smart in the head to kind of keep the disc around, and sometimes it's like revisiting an old friend. So I appreciate that. But I mean, stuff like Assassin's Creed 2, I don't know if you guys played this, but when you're playing Assassin's Creed 2, like 2 of the missions are blatantly gone. It's like you jump from like level 11 to level 14. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, where did 12 and 13 go? And then, of course, a couple days after the game launches, announced DLC, 2 new missions. Well, I mean, if you're going to take that stuff out and hide it, I mean, like, at least hide it. I mean, that to me was like totally insulting. I mean, that was like, we're going to make you our bitch. You're going to give us an extra $10 and you're going to like it.
I guess, and this letter was actually written specifically about Assassin's Creed 2. I left that out.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And I mean, the flip side of that is levels have gone unfinished in games forever. And it's only now that we have an opportunity, a venue by which we can play those levels, by which those levels can come out and that we can enjoy extra content. That would be the flip side of it. And I guess I would say, if it's not worth the money, just don't buy it. But at least now we have the option to see extra stuff from games we love, potentially.
Well, I mean, that's why it's a perception thing, right? If it feels like it's an extra level, great. But if it feels as if Brad was saying about Assassin's Creed 2, that they intentionally lopped off 2 stages, then that just feels like a big ripoff. And I don't buy that whole sort of apologist argument that says that, we sort of don't have a right to content. Like, who cares? Whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, my argument to what you said, Tim, was like, if the level was poor enough to cut in the first place, then the game should have been crafted to be a complete experience and like wrapped up and polished. And what I get to be on the final disc should be really good. But in the case, I mean, especially of Assassin's Creed 2, which I felt was really just ham-fisted. I mean, it was like, if those were poor enough to cut, I mean, you're going to polish those up, and those are going to be at least as good, if not better. Then I mean, it doesn't sit right with me. And I can hear people saying if you don't want it, don't buy it, which is cool, and I'm fine with that. But at the same time, could you not have changed the order of the levels in Assassin's Creed 2, renumbered them properly so I didn't blatantly feel like somebody was ripping me off? You know what I mean?
Or that the game was bugged, like for some reason you're skipping content and you did something wrong. I guess in fairness to the folks at Ubisoft, they did flat out come out and say, and I guess whether you choose to believe them or not is up to you, they did say, we ran out of time. We couldn't get those levels done and make our release date. So I don't know if it was an issue of quality for them, but rather they had a hard November release date that they had to make, and they were able to finish the ending of the game but missed those two. So I don't know. I will probably end up buying.
If that's the case, here's two alternatives, right? If it was supposed to be in there anyways, they should just give it to you free then, and as a goodwill thing. Because that just sounds wrong. That they would charge you something, so you're buying an incomplete game and then you're charging you extra for something they should have completed. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. The other alternative to me also is that if they lower the price of the game, because let's be honest, a large part of the reason why we're seeing DLCs also is because they're trying to undermine the used game market, right? They're trying to get people to not resell their games and hold on to them, right? Why not just lower the retail price at least a tad? And say, okay, well, it's not complete, but we'll charge you an incomplete price, and then if you want to buy the extra levels, then pay the additional fee for it, and at the same time, it's sort of a win-win for them because again, they're not reselling the games, and they're and thereby getting a lower cut of the revenue or whatever.
That's an ideal world I wish I could live in.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I think Assassin's Creed 2 is going to come up a couple times over the course of these letters. So let's put that one to bed and go on to letter number 2. This one comes from Joe TBD, and he writes, does it ever feel like developers get stubborn and refuse to change things that people don't like about their games? For example, the long drive to the mission in GTA games that you have to repeat every time you get killed. Or putting a save point before a long, unskippable cutscene, followed by a hard boss battle. There should be an industry standard document listing all the annoying gameplay decisions that no one wants to see in any future game.
Amen.
I think this problem stems from it's sort of like the Capcom mentality where they think the annoying parts of their games are inherent to what made them a success, in regards to Resident Evil, how the characters were supposed to move slow and, spin around on the top like a tank, and that was somehow what people actually liked about the game, and these games are a success they're successful in their own relative ways, right? And, the developers feel I'm not sure I would call it a stubbornness, but they think it's part of their success, so they don't want to let that go. And it's always, tricky finding that balance between, evolving certain things and leaving enough things alone so that the integrity is intact. But I do sort of feel it does feel like sometimes developers are just way too stubborn and they should let certain things go and try to evolve it. But then again, I'm very forgiving. I like when developers do that. And, unfortunately, many gamers out there, more would prefer more or less the same Madden every year with a few tweaks. I'm not that guy, but.
It's funny you mentioned Capcom, Chi, because when I read this question initially, for some reason, my brain wanted me to say Capcom, but I couldn't think of anything to say. It just felt like a Capcom kind of thing. So I think it's funny that we're kind of on the same level about that. But I definitely agree. There's a lot of stuff, especially in the current generation, that needs to just go. I mean, people might have said that there were a few reasons, maybe technical reasons, like maybe we couldn't put that save before the boss because blah, 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 or we need to make you drive that distance in GTA because such and such. But with the power that we're talking about here with the 360 and the PS3, there is really no reason whatsoever that any of these things should be persisting. As far as I'm concerned, a lot of this stuff is sheer laziness on the point of the developer.
Right? I was going to say that.
It's just lazy. I mean, you make a game, maybe you screw it up the first time, but when you get the feedback from the players the second time, you owe it to them to make that game better if there are genuinely things that need to be fixed, such as no save point before bosses. I mean, I'm still playing games these days where there's no save point before a fucking boss. And it's like, have you not been paying attention to the industry for like the last 20 years? People hate that. Nobody likes that. Not a single player that I've ever talked to genuinely would say, I like fighting 6 bosses in a row with no save point, and if I die in the last, doing them all over, that's great. Like, nobody fucking says that. So any developer that partakes of these bad habits totally loses cred with me. They're just lazy, okay? And I know a lot of developers. They're good people. There may be financial reasons. There may be time reasons why they don't do these things. But the bottom line is they need to be done. There's really, really no excuse why they shouldn't be done.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there. The same thing with the boss thing. It's totally something that happens all the fucking time in RPGs. I was just playing Dragon Quest VIII, and you fucking go up and you fight a boss, and there is a save point before you fight him. But of course, it's one of those multi-stage bosses where you fight his first form and you win, then you have to fight a second form without being able to save or heal or anything. So you're just basically like, and the funny thing about Dragon Quest VIII is like, you're cruising along and you don't ever have to like fucking grind before this point, and then all of a sudden you get to this boss whose first form is kind of easy, and then the second form like smacks the shit out of you if you're not like in the 30s, like 31 range or whatever. The nice thing there is that like if you lose, you can go, you resurrect back in town and you can go level grind and go back, and you don't have to fight the first boss again. But I've played 100 RPGs where you have this same problem, and it's like, I understand that in the Final Fantasy era on the Nintendo. I don't see why we're still having it now. RPGs in general have these things. Like, why does every RPG follow the same dungeon town template? Why does that never deviate and all these things? It's because these guys are stubborn, and that's how it's always been, and they stick with it for some reason, and it drives me absolutely batshit insane.
It's easier to do the same thing over and over again rather than fix it, I guess.
I mean, just as an example that we were talking about tonight, I mean, Divinity 2 that I'm playing, very complex, very large, very deep. It's a big open world, and yet in this game, I can save anywhere at any time, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. I can save in the middle of a boss battle. I can save in the middle of healing. I can save, up on a mountain. I can save in my village, anytime, anywhere, and that to me is awesome. Like, every single game in the world, as far as I'm concerned, needs to let you save anywhere that you want to. I mean, there's just no excuse. And stuff like that, like, let me skip the cutscenes, let me skip the drive that I've driven 10 times, any of that stuff. That stuff, no. It's done. It needs to be done.
Yeah, the concept of the save point. The whole game should be a save point. I can save anywhere.
Exactly.
And Joe mentioned unskippable cutscenes. That's never bothered. That's never bothered
that drives me nuts.
Well,
hate it.
It's never bothered me because I like cutscenes. Like, I like story, and I like watching the cutscene once. Now, if it's not skippable, if I have to watch it over and over, and I'll come back to Assassin's Creed 2, and this is the part where I whine about losing my save. I played, 13 hours of Assassin's Creed 2, and it ate my game save. I had to start over, and you can't skip the cutscenes. Well, now I get it. Now, every blasted cutscene, you need to be able to press start and get through it. I mean, I'm completely on board with that. So, gosh, we're angry people, aren't we?
We are.
But rightfully
angry.
so. Rightfully so. We are in the right here.
Yeah, our scorn and wrath knows no fucking bounds. I have contempt for everything tonight, so.
Everything, everyone. The third question in our list of questions to be read. This comes from, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. It's Li-ion, Li-ion, and I apologize for mispronouncing it. Let us know on the forums if we're doing it wrong. But Li-ion asks, there are some multi-platform titles which differ quite a lot from platform to platform. Recent examples are the RPGs Dragon Age and Risen. I saw a couple of review sites which gave the PC versions of these games higher scores than the console versions. I also notice a lot of discussion in the respective message boards of how the game on platform A is so much better on platform B. So, how much do you think the differences have to be to justify separate reviews for each platform? I know in the case of Dragon Age, Game Critics published a PC review and a separate Xbox review. So clearly, in that case, I guess what would the Game Critics stance on this be?
I mean, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule to it, but I think inherently, if the code is meant to be the same game, but it's not quite executed properly, that's another story. But if there's fundamental differences, like the whole combat system is different, or there's just different features, I think that definitely warrants, a separate review.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think Dragon Age is a perfect example. I mean, the combat systems between 360 and PC are totally different. I mean, and so in that case, it absolutely did warrant a different review. I mean, like she said, if it's the same game but like it's prettier on PC or it runs a little smoother on the 360, I mean, minor stuff like that, I don't think warrants a separate review. But in the case of like PC especially, I mean, sometimes you can get a lot of extra content that gets added in. You can have certain mods that really affect the way a game plays. You can have new patches, maybe that are more extensive than what you can get on 360. I mean, if anything, in my mind, if anything changes the way the game is played or the actual content of the game, then to me that's a different review.
Right. If the design is different, right? If the game design is different, right? I agree. Mm-hmm.
It's got to be more than just graphics, though, to me.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine in a practical sense it would also be dependent on, do you have somebody with the time to review both versions, or do you have two critics who can, each have access to separate versions?
Right, that's the official Game Critics line.
Yeah. Anything else on that question?
One thing I did want to add is just for people who are concerned about those sort of things, I mean, please make sure that you look at the disclaimers that come at the end of all the reviews, because we will specifically tell you which version we played, and so that may actually affect your, the value you get from our reviews. I mean, somebody wanting to play the PC version of Dragon Age wouldn't get very much use out of our 360 version, which is why we, specifically lay it out there. So make sure you check the disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, Lee Ion asked another question, this one much shorter, but I think it's a good one. He writes, very basically, is there hope for the adventure genre? Well, aren't we in a renaissance? Aren't we in an adventure genre renaissance with the Return of the Monkey Island games, with the Phoenix Wright games, which aren't really a traditional adventure game, but I think are kind of the heir apparent. Machinarium, which I started at Richard Nyak's insistence, is fantastic, an absolutely wonderful evolution of that genre, but still a very pure 2D adventure game. So I think that genre was dead for quite a while, but I think it's coming back, isn't it?
I think there's kind of a resurgence of those games, but I think that one thing that all those games have in common is that they're very kind of small scale. I mean, with the example of Machinarium, I mean, that's pretty much like an indie game. Hopefully it'll come to some of the consoles as a download. I mean, I would very much like to play it. But I think in the traditional classic, capital A adventure game, I think, we may see little games here and there, but I think on the whole, that kind of style is kind of done. I don't know for sure, but I have a suspicion that people who are newer gamers or who did not grow up playing like, Police Quest or Leisure Suit Larry or King's Quest or any of those, are probably not going to get a lot of, I hesitate to say not get a lot of value out of those style of games, but I think that they kind of have to be more motivated than the average player to really get into them. I think for me, the adventure game has kind of evolved into a different form, and by that I mean games which are very heavy story based, and they incorporate things like quick time events or other cinema type actions to take the place where you would normally expect to see action in an action game, but adventure games don't really have a lot of fast reflex kind of stuff. So in lieu of actually having a fighting engine or of having a shooting engine, we have QTEs and other type of things like that. And for example, for me, I would think of Heavy Rain, Indigo Prophecy, Shenmue even. I think the Shenmue series to a certain extent, also Dreamfall. Those type of games, they're 3D. They take place in a 3D world, but those games are mostly about exploration and doing tasks. And when it comes down to actually having action, with the exception being Shenmue, of course, they kind of, you do a QTE, you see your character doing something cool. You're still kind of in control, but they're making the player go through these actions in a different way. So to me, this new style, this drama-heavy style, this kind of QTE-heavy style, to me is what the adventure genre has evolved into. And I think, honestly, that is an easier sell to players than going back to the old hunt and peck kind of 2D status that previous adventure games have.
But even in the later iterations of those adventure games, they were pretty damn accessible. Like when Sierra went back and redid like Police Quest and VGA and Space Quest and VGA, those games were, you didn't have to really hunt and peck that much. They made a lot of great adjustments. I don't think it's so much that the format is irrelevant. I think it's just that the ones that are the developers that are doing it are just like these really small independent developers that you don't really hear about anymore. And it's not like, back then Sierra they were like PC games. I mean, they dominated, and they were the ones putting out all the high profile Quest games. So if you had like a Rockstar or an Activision put out a Quest game, I think it would be, I don't know. I think I can't say this for sure, but I think it would still be well received to a certain extent. I mean, with the right adjustments, obviously, not like the classic Zach McCracken. You have to type in, your input kind of a thing.
But would it be 2D? Would you still have to like search every screen for like your cursor to react to something on the screen? I mean, like, because that's kind of how this game's played back then.
Yeah, but even like I said, the later Gabriel was it Gabriel Knight, right? It was Gabriel Knight. Gabriel Knight, Police Quest, you could just tab, and it would actually go through the hot spots for you. So you really didn't have. I mean, they were quite easy, if you ask me. Actually, those games were pretty damn easy. I'd get through them in like a couple of days, whereas the old really classic Quest games, it would take me like weeks, to find. But
if those still have a life, how come nobody's really making them? I mean, indie people, of course, but you can find anything in the indie scene. I mean, that's not really a good indicator. Nobody is making any games like that in the larger sphere.
The people who the people who knew how to make those games are all either retired or moved on to other things. I don't think there's anyone left who knows how to make a great adventure game. I mean, even Tim Schafer, who you would call a master of the adventure genre, has all but abandoned that concept.
I think that's a very valid point, Brad, and I don't have an answer to that. I certainly recall back in the day, and speaking of Star Trek, as one of the better Star Trek games was a Quest style game. So I think it was definitely, and the Indiana Jones, that was a classic, and the Fate of Atlantis was another classic right there, right? I think those kind of high profile games would certainly bolster the genre back to prominence. But yeah, why even guys like Tim Schafer have abandoned it? I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. You'd have to ask him.
Well, I mean, I think that the genre, the core of the genre, has potential. I've played those games. I enjoy those games. But I think, honestly, in today's environment, they need to be 3D. They need to be more engaging. They need to be more visually appealing. And I think the play style has to be a little bit different. I mean, I think it's just kind of a natural evolution.
Well, I think they are all those things. But the one thing that these adventure games really are, they're really like, exciting in that kind of shoot the guy in the face explosions kind of way. That's the one
thing
I would say.
Who wants to buy a game that's not exciting, man? Nobody wants to buy a game that's not exciting.
Right. Well, those games, but we all enjoyed those games. They were exciting in their own way, but they were definitely more mental, and come on, let's face it, Myst is one of the greatest selling games of all time, right? I mean, that there's certainly an appeal there for even the casual folks, but yeah, there just hasn't been like a Myst in a long time.
I will forever damn full motion video for killing Sierra Online. Oh my god.
Right.
Because Myst and Seventh Guest and Sierra poured so many millions of dollars into creating a full motion video franchise, and Phantasmagoria and Gabriel Knight 2 just, sent them on the beginning of their downward spiral. So I miss the genre, although I will say I paid for the Space Quest and King's Quest packs on Steam. They were $5 a piece, and I went back to play them, and I'll be honest, I love those games, but I could not spend more than 5 minutes or so on them. So I don't know. It's like I want them to come back, but do I really want them to come back, I guess? And let's not forget the importance, maybe that genre has morphed into games like Grey's Anatomy, the game.
Oh, don't insult the genre.
God, bring it up. Maybe that's what's happening.
Why didn't it work for you though, Tim? I mean, if you can just be brief about that.
Well, because I think honestly for me, I've played those games and replayed them so many times that I bought them more as just a security blanket.
Right. So it's not really a fair evaluation. We kind of need to get a fresh game, but there have been some new games, although I haven't played them. But
Yeah, I would recommend Machinarium. I think it's a outstanding example of the genre, and very cheap on Steam. Go get it. Let's move on. Next question. This comes from Hargrada, and he writes, how much do your expectations, such as hype, previous chapters in a series, setting, plot, etc., how much do your expectations play into your reviews? Should a game be penalized for not doing things you think it should, regardless of the developer's intent?
For me, I don't know. Expectations certainly play a part in it. You try to be as unbiased as you can be and take every game on its own terms, but nobody is truly unbiased. You're basically coming into games with preconceived notions, even when it's a brand new game of a new franchise. So when you're playing like a sequel or something like that, it's even more so because you have previous experience with it. You bring those in, and they certainly factor into how you feel about the experience and the game as you go along. But at the same time, when it comes time to write the actual review, I let most of that shit go and try to take the game on its own merit. I mean, I've played a lot of games that are part of a series or something like that and done a lot of reviews. I think we all have, because that's what most of the gaming industry is at this point, is sequels. But, it's always there, but you try not to let it affect you when it comes down to the end, when it comes to assigning a score and actually doing the writing. That's at least how I look at it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Mike. I mean, I think that you are correct in saying that nobody is totally unbiased. I mean, that's like, to me, if somebody brings up the bias word, that to me says they don't even know what they're talking about, because nothing in life is completely unbiased. I mean, it's just not a reality. But I think, like you said, what we can really do is try to put aside things that we feel may color our view and really kind of take the game on its own terms. However, I will say that the way that I kind of see expectations, I mean, it's kind of a loaded question from the get-go, but for me, the way that I kind of look at that is, if I know what a game is about, or if I let's say a fighting game. If I get into a fighting game, it seems to me like there should be certain things that are kind of logical to expect. Like, like I should be able to hit people. I should be able to have a couple different moves. I should be able to refill my life somehow or something. I mean, there's just these kind of basic expectations that you kind of think that a game should go through. If it's something that's really outside the box, I mean, if I'm playing, a medieval Knights and Dragons game and there's no rocket launcher, that would be a really bad form for me to say there's no rocket launcher, because that's illogical to expect.
Right.
But at the same time, I think, you should be able to expect like a horse. You should be able to expect, dragons that look cool, shields. I mean, it's just about what is a logical thing that this game should offer without really trying to like redesign it in your own head. And like I said, it's kind of a slippery slope, because then if you go too far down that path, then you start thinking, well, it should have had this, and it should have had this, and it should have had this, which may or may not be, accurate. But I think most of us as critics, we've been doing this long enough that we really know kind of where to draw those lines. And it's almost like an art form. I mean, I'd like to think that, to me, I have a pretty good grasp on what's a reasonable thing to expect and what's an unreasonable thing to expect. But that's not something that I can really quantify for anybody. And I would imagine that everybody has their own level of where that occurs. So, but I try to do my best. I'm sure that the rest of us do as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think my take is, everyone has expectations and hype, that goes into it. I think you can't avoid it. I think the one thing we try to do is we try to be honest about it, for first and foremost, and secondly, you have to be, as Brad was saying, you have to be rational to have in those expectations. Otherwise, you just lose all credibility. If you're expecting something that's just completely crazy, then that's not fair. I mean, but I know it definitely factors in. I mean, because I can recall my own personal example of that is a little Game Boy Advance game called Car Battler Joe, where
Car Battler Joe,
blast from the past.
I can't believe I'm throwing this out there, but that was a game that I just completely picked off the shelf, had no expectations whatsoever, and I had to admit that it felt like felt like I hit a jackpot thing, where it was just completely out of the blue, and that factored into a very positive experience, And then I can think of another example, or another famous example on our own website where, our whole Dan Weissenberger's Halo 3 review, it revolved around his, expectations around how Microsoft sold this game as this epic war battle, between two races, and ultimately it wasn't that. It was like you going into a stage fighting 10 aliens at a time, which wasn't the sort of the epic war that they sold it to be. And I thought that was fair. A lot of people didn't think that was fair, but I thought it was fair. We let the review. I approved the review based on that. So.
No, that's very true. I'm glad you brought that up, Chi, because I think that the way a developer advertises or pushes the game prior to release has a lot to play in what we expect. For example, for me, Fable was one of the most hyped games before it came out. And of course, whenever Peter Molyneux says anything, you got to completely disregard at least 50% of what he says, right? Because he's totally Mr. Hype. Right. But at the same time, they said things that, led us gamers to expect much more than what we got. Fable was okay, but it was just basically this kind of straightforward action game with a few, minor twists here and there. It wasn't like the genre redefining, world altering kind of thing. So in a case where somebody hypes a game a lot, especially if it's the, only if it's the developer or the publisher, and they're telling us it's gonna, be the second coming, then I think it's pretty justifiable to have high expectations. So if we are fed a bunch of lines and then the game doesn't deliver, then I think as critics we have every right to take them to task for something like that.
Right. I think the whole judging the game on its own terms, it's an ideal and it's something we should strive for, but the reality is it's not quite possible, really. It's it's somewhat of a fallacy in some respects.
Yeah, how do you tell somebody what they have a right to expect? That's an intensely personal thing for everybody. So we can just do the best we can, and if that's not good enough for somebody, then there's a billion other review websites on the web.
Well said. Let's move on. The second to last question. We've got time for two more. Now, this question is interesting. It is specifically for you, Brad.
Uh-oh.
Oh. And this is the question. It says, Brad, where do you live? I'd like to come visit you. That's strange. That's an odd question. Why would I choose that? No, I'm joking, of course. This is actually for you, but it comes from Coils3, and he writes, Brad, define souls in video games. Now, this is in reference to a review you wrote earlier, this would have been last year now, your review of Infamous. And Brad, would you like me to quote the passage? Unless you have
sure, if you've got it handy, go ahead.
I happen to have it handy. You wrote, and quoting Brad Gallaway, and I will try to do my best Brad impression. Spiritual deficiency may.
You gotta go deeper. Deeper. It's not good enough.
Okay. Spiritual deficiency may.
No, dude, that's totally fake. You got to go deep, like tough guy voice, like me. Listen what I sound like and do that.
Oh, it's like Stallone online with me. Spiritual deficiency may seem like an odd criticism for someone to level against a video game, but after putting Infamous through its paces and adventuring with protagonist Cole McGrath in Empire City, it was really the only conclusion I could come to.
There you go.
Yeah,
I think you got the hate there. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. I was feeling that. That was me. I thought it was me for a second.
Yeah. I would be interested to see how your son would react to that voice.
He'd probably try to give you a hug, at which point I'd have to stop him because.
So it seems what you were saying here, and you put it really well later in the paragraph. You say the nuts and bolts are all there, and the necessary elements seem to be in place. Yet at no point did I ever feel immersed or convinced. I could mentally understand what was supposed to be happening, yet I never felt it for a moment. So I guess what Coils 3 is asking is what does it mean for a game to have a soul or lack a soul?
Well, just like in real life, this is one of those things that you kind of have to take on faith a little bit. In reference to that specific review, I remember it pretty well because I did take a little bit of heat for after that review went live. With Infamous, it was like I said, like you just quoted, everything was there. Like there was this wide open world, a variety of powers. The graphics were really good. It was from a studio that I had a lot of respect for. On paper, this should have been like a total home run, but when I actually got my hands on it, it felt really contrived. It felt really, almost mechanical in the way it was put together. It was almost as if the developers kind of picked and chose from the different high points of other games in a similar genre and kind of cobbled them together in this kind of Frankenstein creation that was just, it was almost like designed by committee, where I didn't really feel as though there was one defining vision going on. I didn't feel like there was a message or like, any spark there. I mean, and how do you define spark? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's, again, like we just have been saying, it's different for everybody. But in this case, I just felt like it was a product, like I felt like it was calculated to hit all of the important bullet points, and if that was done, then therefore it would be a big seller, and therefore it would get really good review scores, and it would be a big hit, and so forth and so on. But it didn't feel to me as though there was one dude somewhere saying, you know what, I have this vision of this game I'd like to call Infamous, and I want to make this happen. Like, this is my dream. Like, I didn't get that at any point. Like, it felt really empty to me. And in contrast to that, there are a lot of games where they maybe have some problems, like they have some issues with the technical side or a few, bad calls here and there. But underneath it, you can kind of tell that the people who made the game really cared. I mean, it's like little touches that they add in, little incidental animations that are totally unnecessary, but they're there because obviously somebody took the time to make it because they cared. Little jokes that you find sometimes, or just the whole approach. And a recent example of a game that I felt had a really, really clear and noticeable soul for me was Bionic Commando, which was one of my favorite games of last year. I know it took a lot of flack in the press, but when you look at everything that they did, and especially the end game, I was actually just discussing this with somebody today. If anybody gets to the end of Bionic Commando, you cannot tell me that was crafted to please the masses or that was a design by committee. That was like a totally crazy, unpredictable, bold end to that game, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But that game did not go in any way, shape, or form the way that most reviewers thought it would go, and because of that, they trashed it. But to me, that was somebody saying, "This is my vision. This is the feeling that I have for this game, and I'm going to do this regardless of whether people like it or not." And I totally respected it. I mean, I thought it worked. I thought it was bold, and that was a game that had a number of shortfalls. But in total, I could really feel that the development team, like they loved this game. Like there was just so much to notice, so much to pick up on, and so much that was there, to me anyway, that I felt like, man, this game, I can forgive all its problems and love it because I can see what they're going for. So that's kind of what I meant by that. Which means nothing, of course, but, what am I supposed to say? It's, soul, no soul, I don't know.
Yeah, I would just add that for me, it's when the sort of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, I guess, in a game, which is sort of a vague and amorphous statement that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to people. But you kind of know it when you see it, when a game has a soul, sort of when you feel like it's, not just components put into place and sort of fit together, but like the whole thing sort of coalesces into some greater experience type deal. I don't know. It's a very philosophical question for this show.
For some reason, like I go back to Bruce Lee for some reason, and for whatever reason, he's a guy that feels fresh. He feels original, despite the fact that he's doing martial arts, which was other people were doing at the same time also. But he had a completely unique take on it. He brought a different kind of vibe to it, a different kind of energy, a different kind of charisma. And then after he died, you had a bunch of other imitations, and they just never quite lived up to it, and it's sort of like the same thing in what we're talking about here. And then eventually you have someone like Jackie Chan, who's not an imitator, who again has his own unique take on it, right? So I think it's, video games are no different in that regard. I think when you have a game that just feels original and feels like it has its own unique voice, that's what feels like a soul, I guess.
Is there any series that has gone from having an extraordinary amount of soul to a complete absence of soul? Any series more indicative of that than The Legend of Zelda? I mean, because those games were about exploration and wonder and discovery, and now those games are about, really, they're about
just repeating the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's about The Legend of Zelda. I mean, the games are just kind of a self, they're self-referential, almost a parody of itself. It's about getting the boomerang. It's about getting a shot. It's about getting.
That was my first reaction. Get the boomerang.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Mega Man was like that before it went by the wayside. The first The first one or two were like totally like revolutionary and brilliant, and then after that, I love Mega Man. Don't get me wrong, but they were kind of by the numbers. They were kind of rote. I mean, for me, the ultimate example is like Armored Core. When Armored Core came out on was it like PS1, like totally blew me away. It just was like fresh and new and exciting, and it was just like unbelievable, and it had everything I love about giant robots, and it was just so kick ass. And then they continued to run it into the ground because then they were like checking their own boxes. They stopped innovating and they stopped being fresh and exciting, and they were just like, we did it once, we can do it again. And anytime any series goes to that place, it's dead.
Right, and then
Zelda
the other
included.
side. Right, and then the other extreme of that is sort of like you get Super Mario 64, where it is kind of doing the same things over again, but it just has such a great take in a 3D space and such innovation there that felt like completely original and soulful as well.
Yeah. Or Galaxy after it, I thought. But then New Super Mario Brothers Wii or whatever they're calling it, not so much of a soul there.
Yeah.
So, all right, I think we've explained that pretty well.
Yeah, good work. Good work, guys. Yeah.
So we are down to our last question, and it could potentially be a big one, but we're going to keep it very short. This comes from Bosco, and he writes, if you had to pick a game of the decade, could you? What would it be, and why? And we didn't do a game of the decade show, but this is going to be it. So, folks, real fast, what's your game of the decade, and 2 sentences why?
I'll go first then, since nobody wants to go. Mine is not a big surprise. I'm going with World of Warcraft. I don't play anymore. I have no desire to play anymore. But for a span of 2 years or whatever, it totally dominated my life. And what do they have now? 15 million people playing. So clearly there's something that works there that people like, and it's become the template for all MMOs. So that's my game of the decade.
Chi, how about you?
Sure. Mine is Wii Sports. I think it's sort of symbolic of the whole rise and fall of casual gaming. I think has anything caused more concern for console gamers and has been more talked about and argued and debated and on. So that's my pick.
Brad, how about you?
If I had to pick one, I think I would go for one of the most obvious ones, I think, and that would be Grand Theft Auto 3. Just because its take on introducing these open world concepts that are now, commonplace and almost expected, really turned the world on its ear at the time. I mean, it may have had issues, but it was really, really revolutionary when it came out. So I think that, for me, no other game in the past decade has had more of an influence on the industry overall than GTA 3.
And I hate to be repetitive, but I'm going to go with World of Warcraft, which I guess makes it the GameCritics.com game of the decade. No, I mean,
go ahead.
You win this round.
Blizzard.
No, I'll speak. I can only speak for myself. It has really, with very few exceptions, completely eliminated PC gaming as a hobby for me. Only recently have I come back and started playing PC games again, because whenever I'm sitting at my laptop and thinking about another game, I'm thinking, well, gosh, I should be playing World of Warcraft because that's more important, when indeed it's not really important at all. I can't play first-person shooters on computers anymore because my muscle memory thinks I'm trying to control my World of Warcraft character. So Half-Life has become a console game for me, and that is a major change from who I was 5 years ago. So it's really changed. It's changed everything for me from a gaming standpoint. So I guess that's it for our questions, and I want to thank all of our readers. We are officially caught up, so if there's additional things you want to ask us, if we missed a question, feel free to ask it again. Where do you ask your questions? Well, you know where you go? You go to GameCritics.com. That's where you leave your feedback. You can also listen to the show there. You can also go to iTunes or Zune, but we'd really like you to come to the GameCritics.com website. And while you're there, read some features and reviews. We've got a slew of new hot writers tons of new content. Am I right, guys? I went to the site today. There were like 5 new articles, and it's Saturday. I mean, when does that happen? Just fantastic stuff.
Definitely have a lot of new guys, new blood, who are really, really, really talented. If you haven't been to the site in a while, this is definitely the perfect time to come back, because the guys we have on staff now are hot. And they can write well, too.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I thought that was an appeal to women listeners. I was like, all right, Brad.
I thought you were coming out.
Of course you guys would go there. Give me a break.
Oh, man.
I totally didn't know where this fucking show was going. It's man love.
Man love. Man love. I like
it. It is bromance. It is bromance. But at any rate, it's a really exciting time to be part of the site, so we hope everybody comes and checks it out and continues listening to the show. We'll be back next time with our 30th episode. I suspect by that point Mass Effect 2 will be out. I have a feeling we'll probably be talking about that, at least Brad and I.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
I have a feeling
I'm ready to talk about it now.
I'll start talking about Mass Effect 1.
Oh, God.
Catch up.
You got some catching up to do, dude.
Yeah.
Well, any last thoughts, guys? Chi, Brad, Mike?
As always, thanks for tuning in.
There we go. Well, my thanks to you guys. My thanks to all the listeners. I'm Tim Spaeth. Until next time, good night and bon chance.